order and ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Motion made by Mr. Guthrie. Do we have seconded by Mr. Lee? And all in favor? Motion carries 5 in favor, 2 absent. All right, so at this time, the first item on our agendas are new business, our projected expenditures and revenues. And so we will turn it over to Ms. Benet to give us the good news.
Here we go. Here we go for our FY26 budget workshop. We've met several times with district leadership. We've met with school principals, department heads. Our executive cabinet has met several times to scrub through this. But we were talking with Mr. Doherty and thought it would be a good idea to paint our picture of all of our needs. They're not really wants at this stage of the game. These are needs for Dorchester School District 2. And we're just going to present the information that we've gathered together, and we'll have some discussion because we have some good information for you.
And just to piggyback on that, I appreciate Tina and Lisa and Liz's work on this. Just to kind of paint that picture, last year we went into our cash balance for about $4.6 million last year to do a lot of incentives for our teachers, which was awesome. Great. We'll see that in this presentation. The other thing that we did, we based a lot of our allocations last year based upon about 1,000 students on growth based on the demographic study. However, we've lost 595 students. And so when you see this presentation, we're going to kind of coin it as right sizing the district. Again, trying not to cut any programming. Again, trying to make sure we're fiscally responsible, but again, trying to balance the budget. So again, trying to right size the district with those things in mind. So when you see this presentation, that's kind of what our team did, our executive cabinet did. We did that. We went through it several different times about wants and needs. Security is a top priority for us. Academics is a top priority for us. And we do not want to lose any student experiences that we have throughout the district that's why DD2 is great. And so we're trying to make sure that we've captured all that in this presentation. So I'll just turn that over to Ms. Benet.
As Mr. Gordy was just saying, sorry, I'm not able to forward the slides. Probably you. It's probably operator error. Sure. Okay, thank you. As Mr. Horty was just talking about the budget priorities, the things that we definitely wanted to take into consideration while we're working on this. Thank you. Budget is student achievement, as Mr. Gordy said. Also, the teacher quality, recruitment and retention, and financial stewardship. So just to kind of give y'all an update on where we are with the session that's happening in Columbia. Things start early, but they take a long time to go through in Columbia. January 13th is when the governor, his budget request was released back in January. It's gone through the House Ways and Means, through different subcommittees, and to the House floor for their budget deliberation. Into our budget based on what has been presented out of the House. Right now, you can see we are here in March through April 3rd. We're still in the Senate budget subcommittee meetings, and then it'll go to the full Senate Finance, and then the Senate floor. We just received some information in our legislative update that we may not get any additional numbers out of Columbia, like any additional revenues. The revenues weren't as high this year as what they had been in last year. Last year, we got some good state revenues. So we're working off of what came out of the House numbers. So our increases in our general fund revenue that we were anticipating, we met with the county folks and the additional property tax from preliminary information from the county auditor is $4.4 million. That's due to just some growth. It's not due to a tax increase. This is just what they were predicting for additional property tax revenue. The state aid classrooms money is our SCDE money, plus some other state revenues, retiree insurance. That's only $1.5 million. And those monies, as we said, they came out of the House. And we're not anticipating numbers any higher from the Senate, but we never know. We can be hopeful. The state funding for tier 3, that is the money that replaces the penny, well, it's for the penny sales tax that replaces our property taxes on homeowners who no longer have to pay their property taxes. It's the Act 388. And that increases $1.5 million. So our total additional revenues equals $7.4 million. But we're talking about Act 388, that $1.5 million increase that we are seeing for next year. Part of Act 388, and this is just what we have to live with. This is what school districts funding is part of their funding is Act 388. Getting that penny sales tax. With 388, the millage, there are millage caps in place for all school districts. You can increase your millage by the consumer price index plus the population growth in your school district. So every year we are able to increase, and that's what Act 388 does for us. It gives us the vehicle to be able to increase our millage. Local funding, there is local funding that's expected because the state is expecting for the local to provide. They provide 70% is what their ratio is for DD2, and local funding should equal 30%. As everyone knows, DD2 does not have fiscal autonomy, so the school board is not able to raise millage. It has to go to the county council. So that's one thing that Act 388 does not do. It does not allow for the school district, for the school board to control the district spending of what we need to spend for our school district. We didn't increase revenues based on 388. We didn't get a windfall. In fact, as you'll see on the next slide, we are losing money because of Act 388. Unfortunately, this leads to not very positive business and school district relation tax on the businesses. We don't have a lot of industry or big business. We have a lot of mom and pops here in school district too. So it feels like it's more of a burden on them. And so it makes things kind of have some friction between us and them. We're doing the best we can though. And the other thing that Act 388, it did not replace our local tax dollars when it passed. So fiscal impact on Dorchester too. When this passed in 2008, 2009, on the 4% properties, we received the tier 3 money. So in our last audit, 23-24, we received 33.7 million for Act tier 3. If our property tax bills would have gone out and we would have been able to collect 4% revenues on the 4% properties, we would have gotten 63.9 million. A difference of $30.2 million. We did not receive just in 1 year. So every year that compounds and adds up. So since inception, Dorchester 2 had not received $205.7 million because of Act 388. This next slide, just speaking about millage, this is a history of our DD2 operating millage. In 2017, 2018, we were at 173.6, and we had a big push. We did get county council to give us a 10 mil increase that we were able to put into teachers and staff at that time of the 2018-19 budget, and we haven't received an increase since then. Did have roll back a reassessment this year, so we had to roll back the millage by 5 mills so that we wouldn't get a windfall from the new growth that's in the county. So 178.6 mills is where we're at right now. Oops. So we're talking about our millage increase history, or what we could have asked for a millage increase, but we weren't granted the millage increase. Back in tax year 2020 for our 2021 fiscal year, we could have asked for 6 mills based on our consumer price index and our growth. We could have asked the next year for 5, the next year 10.8, the next, because consumer price index and the growth in our district was that high. So we could have asked for those mills. And then last year we could have asked for 13.4. So we did not ask for any of that, or if we asked, we weren't granted that. So those 3 years of look back were 43 mills. We just got our letter from the state that says the consumer price index and growth for this new year, for our new budget cycle, we could ask for 12.4 mills. So part of Act 388 is you can ask for a current year millage plus 3 years for 3-year look back. So we have 43 mills in look back and 12.39 mills for current year. So the total of those is 55 mills.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the previous years that you did not request it, is it because you just felt they couldn't give it, or was there a reason behind not asking for it? That would be a,
Board member friends. I don't know if there was an appetite to ask for the millage increase.
Basically, they said, don't ask.
or they told,
It's like, we're not gonna do that. At that time.
The county council said that.
so we don't go on record as saying, well, you may tell us not to, but we're gonna ask because we have a right to. And the fact that we didn't, because they said they weren't gonna do it, I think it's important for them to go on record that they chose not to give it. And every year, whenever they want to come back, we can always point back and say, well, you were given the request, but you chose not to. And these are people that we are continuously electing.
I think the argument I've heard, and this is just hearsay, is that they wanted to see a definitive need and like, I guess, show that we've done everything internally we possibly could to cut cost savings, all that, which from my experience on the board to this point, I've seen nothing but that, like an appetite to really like stretch a penny and stretch it even further. So I hope that if that were to be the case, I think it's very evident we've done that. So,
Yes, I know, I agree. So if we were to ask for the 55 mills, not that we will. Operating mill right now is $428,000. So that would give us $23.7 million. And again, that's compounding, so we'll never be able to get those years back, the money, but we could, moving forward, get the revenues off of the millage. And it's not money coming out of the county's budget. This is on tax. This is on taxes for business and industry and anything other than 4% properties. Also,
Just to be explained it like I'm a 5-year, okay? We could potentially ask for a millage increase up to 55. Is that correct?
okay,
Okay, and that would result in increased revenue of $23.7 million.
yes, sir.
Put that out there.
Okay. I wanted to point out, we put on here the value of a debt mill is 871,000. And the reason why that is so much higher is because the debt mill is, it goes across all properties in the county, in Dorchester 2 area. So it does include the 4% properties, whereas the operating millage you cannot collect. So that's why it's so much lower for the operating millage. When we're talking about millage rates and the value of a mill. Some districts can have less mills than we are at 178 right now. Some districts have less millage. But the value of the mill is important because they are able to, they have more business and industry and more excess property that the mills can spread out across. Thank you. So if you look at this chart, this is from tax year 2022. We didn't have a more up-to-date one, but it doesn't change very much. You can see that our friends in Charleston, if they were to increase instead of 55 mills and they increased 1 mill, they would get $3 million. So it's easier for them to increase by smaller amounts of millage to get more money because of the value of their mill.
And Ms. Meunier, they have the fiscal autonomy as a school board to raise bills, is that correct?
They do. Charleston and Berkeley also does. We do not have fiscal autonomy. Thank you, Joe. So we are probably 10, 12 down, 12 to the right, but we're only at 420,000. They're lower than us, but reading about us in Dorchester too. Another hot topic that's coming from the state right now is our unassigned fund balance. The state legislators are requiring for school districts to submit monthly what our unassigned fund balance is at the end of each month. So on the cash flow statement, you'll see what that amount is. We've also put a percentage on there of what our budget, the unassigned fund balance is. The board has a policy for 18%, which goes in line with the 2 months that GFOA recommends. We don't really want to be stuck in a spot where who knows if the feds will put a pause on sending us money, as we were worried about a couple months ago, or possibly something happened at the state level. Hurricanes have happened here. Sometimes the funds could be delayed. And so always having 2 months of your operating budget is helpful to have in your savings account, which is our unassigned fund balance. And this is where Mr. Roy discussed earlier, where we reduced some of our unassigned fund balance so that we could balance the budget for this year, this current year. Some of those expenditures were one-time expenditures, which is great to spend your fund balance on. It's not a good idea to spend your fund balance on recurring expenditures. So we're bringing back the pie chart from the old days of our revenues and where the revenues are from. The first item is our local taxes, which is at 26.6%. And for Dorchester too, again, with we'll get into the index of tax payability, but the state has calculated that they could pay 70% and the local monies could equal 30% for Dorchester too. We're at 26.6%. When you add up all of our state revenues in various categories, they're at 72.2. So they are a little bit higher. We'll say some of my CFO friends in different districts, even the ones without fiscal autonomy, they're county councils who have to increase millage understand, especially like in the Columbia school districts. That's just part of the cost of living and just they know prices go up. It just takes more money to run the school district, and they at least increase in the growth to support their school district.
CPI being at the 30%.
The consumer price index for the state. Expenditures by function. We take great pride in Dorchester too, that we put a lot of money in our instructional support, which is our librarians, and our school management. Those are the folks who are with students every single day. That's 77%. And then when you add in transportation safety, who are also with students every single day, we are 84%. So we spend a lot of money directly on students every single day. Facilities, custodial, business services, we also support the students, but we're not in the student classrooms every single day or meeting with them. I did want to point out that our district leadership is 1.1% of our entire budget. So it's really a small amount compared to how much our total budget is. And as just two big categories, the biggest thing that we spend our budget on is salaries and benefits. 86.3%. Speaking of salaries, we wanted to give a comparison of the FY25 teacher salaries. These are comparisons with Beaufort, Berkeley, Charleston, and Lexington one. The first are ones that we are in competition with, I would say. And they are higher than us, of course. Lexington one is in the Columbia area, and they're similarly sized as us, but they are not really in our competition area. We've heard possibly that Berkeley is going to 55,000 next year, and Charleston with their scales being combined, they're talking about 64,000 as a starting salary for next year. We have done great. We have taken great leaps in semester two with our starting teacher salaries. If you look at our history since 2018, very recently, over the past couple of years, like I said, we've received some great state revenues and local revenues based on growth, which we probably won't see again. But we were able to increase from 36,000 to 49,000. That is huge. It was 12.6% just in the past from FY24 to 25. You'll see included in our proposal to increase next year the 1,500 to make a starting salary of 50,500. And we thought that number was important because the governor, the governor proposed to raise the minimum to 30, which is to 50,000. I'm sorry, which is a $3,000 increase on the minimum. We're already close to that, but the House Ways and Means came back and said 1,500. So we wanted to include the 1,500 for sure. We've also included an additional 1,500 on another line item, which we'll be sure to point out to you, which would make a $3,000 increase, making it 52,000.
And then going into class sizes and class ratios, our academic team did a really good job of going over allocations to one of our principals. Again, when you looked at the number of students that we were projected to have, and then a fallout of 595 students, we kind of had to right size our allocations. And we're still staying within the district standards and class ratios. If you look there, the grade level there, 4K, is 20-2, and that 2 is a teaching assistant and a teacher in both 4K and kindergarten. And then you're going down to your ratios there from first grade to fifth grade. You can see those ratios, and also with middle school and high school. Many of our allocations are below some of that 28. There are a few that hit that, but again, trying to make sure, again, kind of right sizing and look at those allocations when we're doing that. Again, not cutting any programming. Middle school still have middle school teaming, in which teachers actually have a time to meet as an individual prep time, and also a team time, in which they use that for PLCs. We're still keeping the block 4 scheduling at the high school. So all of those programmings will still stay intact. Again, just trying to right size. And so,
We'll go back to.
yes, sir.
1 second. So how do our ratios compare with those other districts where we're comparing, looking at teacher salaries? But what are our ratios look like? Are the ratios higher, lower? And if you don't have that, that's fine. That's something I'd like.
That's a great question. We can look into that. That is a great question.
I want to kind of go back, because I mean, we skirted over it, I'm sure there's a reason, but what was the additional, you said the proposed 1,500 increase to 50,500, but then you went to the next line that said proposed with 3,000 increase. Are you just giving us two options?
Yes.
Okay.
We built in the 1,500, then we have another line item to add another 1,500.
Okay. And then we'll get more detail on how.
More to come.
Okay.
That's a great question. Mr. Lee, we can get that information. And then kind of moving on, kind of with these proposed reductions, you can see If you look to the left on this chart, you can see the category says reductions. In the middle is the expenditure description. And so you can see in parentheses the number of allocations that we reduced and the amount that was saved. You can see that the elementary level projected reductions at the middle school is 14, high school is 20. You can see those amounts of savings, and then projected reductions in district office positions. We're thinking 3 positions, savings of around $380,000. So again, right sizing this, again, everybody is going to kind of feel this when we're right sizing this to come up with additional dollars. Again, we want to put as much money into our teachers and staff as we can. And so this is why we're kind of right sizing. So when you look at that, there's proposed reductions of 55 positions. However, when we go through the budget, you're going to see that we're going to ask for some other different positions. So that's not the total of 55, but there'll be probably less than 55 once we add other positions such as special ed, art, and some of those positions that we feel like they're needed due to their class sizes. So when you look at mandates included, you can see the teacher step. That's what $1,500, I believe. Is that correct? That's not the 1,500. That's a step
Right. This
on the salary
that-
scale,
that
right?
is mandated that teachers will receive one because they have another year in service, they get a step. So that's mandated. So you have to receive that.
Is that an unfunded mandate?
That's 70/30.
70/30. Right.
Like to always
Right.
put that out.
But I
there.
do want to ask you this, is that in addition to the $1,500 it is by the state that we add to the beginning scale, correct?
This is moving on the scale. So when you're on year 0 and you move to year 1, that's your step. So you get an increase in your step.
But it's not an addition.
It's not the 1,500 yet.
Okay, gotcha.
Not yet. We're
Make
not
sure
there
we're
yet, Chad.
clarify. Okay. Clarify. And then you can see that we have to do a mandate of 2% salary increase for our bus drivers. That is mandated by the state.
And that's 2% over the state minimum.
We already,
In it based on 2% of their increase of their scale. Yes.
And then going with health insurance, we just learned this. This will be a cost that will go against our employees, and that's a $36.76 a month increase in health insurance. That's just on a single plan. When you look at that, family plan is going to be much more expensive that our employees are going to have to take on that expense. So that's just a $441. That's just for a single plan. That is not a family.
We'll find out some more details about the breakdown of that. This is what was presented, that the increase would be, so. But it's not on the employer. Typically, it's been on the employer. We haven't had an employee
Right.
increase several years.
So now the teachers will, the educators will themselves have to pay this additional?
Yes.
Yeah.
Out of their check. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
So that will offset the $1,500 if you get that. So again, this is just an overview. This is a draft. We're scrubbing through this. So, any other questions?
We have more to go.
Okay, let's get through this. Class. Again, this is a draft going through our team and looking at, some things that we need. Fine arts allocations, bringing Sand Hill Elementary School and Beach Hill Elementary School to 3 positions at each site to cover growth. Right now, they share positions. Then 1 fine arts allocation, half at Gregg Middle School and half band at Rawlings Middle School of the Arts. And then we're adding 4 positions, 4.5 on special education teacher requests based on enrollment to make sure we meet the needs of those students with IEPs. And then the overall base special ed teacher assistance request based on enrollment. Those are 8 positions there that will aid in special ed classrooms. So you can see there's an additional 16.5. Again, you take that off the 55 that you said we were going to save. Again, the 55 aren't just cuts. We're proposed to add the 16.5 back in. So when you look at that, it's $880,000 that we're asking, that we're looking at putting back in that budget. Then content specialist ITS positions included. This is something the board will talk about later tonight. What we had to do with our 6 of those positions, only 7.5 of those positions were taken out of the general fund. The rest of those positions were grant covered by Title I and some out of Title II. We received notice we could no longer pay those out of Title I and Title II. Instead of going with 26 positions, we knew we could not absorb 26 positions in the general fund with everything that's going on. Our proposal was to add those 6 additional 6.5 positions in general fund when we're talking about instructional technology positions, and then the district level content specialists. So we're adding about 6.5, looks like it's 14, but we were already paying 7.5 positions already out of the general fund for those PDCs this year. So when you're talking about additional, you're looking at down at 6, yeah. So
The 8 for the content specialist and then the 6 for the ITs and the math lab that you were discussing. And from full funding, because it was 7.5 at 0.5, works out to 4 full
Right.
FTEs.
So when you look at that, and then the other position we had was instructional technology position for Mac Labs. One thing that we would like to be able to do is go back and be able to use Apple in Mac Labs, because some of those are the industry standard. We've heard that from our teachers, but we want to be able to support those devices. And so that is a proposed position. And then we're removing 4 coach positions that are currently funded in the general fund. So you can see how that's what Tina was talking about there. So it really adds out to like 11 positions that we're adding there to those positions. So, yeah. Any questions on that?
That was a board initiative, so we wanted to include it. So it's included in our additional revenues. We've included that. So then we move into the next slide and we're going to see where we are ending our additional revenues.
Okay, so the next section is the teacher salary increase, and this is the first 1,500 that you're going to see. And this is increasing each cell on the teacher salary scale by $1,500 to bring our starting salary to $50,500 at a cost of $3.4 million. So at this point, with the mandates, classroom allocations, the content specialists that we just discussed, and this piece of the teacher salary increase, we can fit all that within our additional revenue and the reductions that we've discussed previously. Everything from this point on, with the allocations that were received and projections that we have so far, we would need additional millage to be able to cover them. So the next section is other salary considerations. The first line is a step for non-teachers, and just to clarify, that's all other positions that aren't included on the teacher salary schedule. All raise eligible positions. That's $1.6 million for the step for that group of people. In addition, we included a 1% increase for that same group of teachers, people that are not teachers on the teacher salary schedule. That would be a cost of $800,000. And as you can see to the right, it shows how many mills we would need for each individual one of those items. And then on the far right, a cumulative running total of how many that would be. The third line is the second additional $1,500. That would bring the teacher salary increase to a total of $3,000 and would bring the starting salary for Bachelor Zero to $52,000 at an additional cost of $3.4 million. And then the last line in this section is an additional In addition, there were some other academic requests and other departmental requests, which are needs as well. The first are a small group of special education related requests for a child find teacher and teacher assistant, some adaptive technology supplies, and instructional software costs that were previously funded by ESSER. As you know, our ESSER ended in September of last year. And there were some costs that we had been able to pay out of that funding that we need to pick up elsewhere since that funding is
Could
ended.
you, elaborate a little bit more on what that software is? Do we know, like specifically, like what edition?
I think, a major cost of that, I don't see Dr. Gaston, but,
Dr. Gadsden. Good, good.
We're just wondering what the additional instructional software costs were, like, that were previously covered by ESSER. What instructional software is that? Sorry.
You're
I mean, put you on the spot.
additional software, instructional software costs previously for ISR. You know what those are?
probably the robot. Yes, major part of it was the RoboKind.
What, say that, could you what?
RoboKind, what is that?
RoboKind curriculum, it's a new curriculum that allows speech language pathologists to work with primarily teachers in our classes for students with autism on combining the communication skills with the classroom-based skills. Had robots, has avatars, online software, as well as hard curriculum. Think we
That's
have
our-
that list. I can get a better list next time. Sorry. I can get you some details.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Glad I had an answer.
What I'd like to understand is for each software we're using, where is that targeted? So in this case, this RoboKind is to help our students with autism and support thereof. You know, for all the other titles, because one of the areas that I want to explore a little bit further is we spend a lot on software. Are we getting the bang for the buck for that software spent? And so I don't know what each one is actually used for. If you, when you're creating that list, you can add that to it. Thank you. You're very well.
We also had some additional departmental requests. First on that list was a teacher leader of recruiting, mentoring, and induction. At a cost of $88,000. That is to take some of the load off of what our folks in HR are good for tax doing right now. We also have a projected energy cost increase. Unfortunately, those rates kind of continue to raise in the year. And that's projected at $250,000. We also have projected an increased cost for maintenance materials and services. We're seeing a lot of increases in things like steel and other items that are raising the prices of some of the things that our maintenance department has to fund. And the last item there is an estimated hazardous transportation fee. So this was a fee that the State Department of Education had levied on districts in the past, and it was put on hold probably during COVID or and they're bringing it back. So this is an estimate of how much that fee may be. We're trying to get a more exact number from our transportation department, update that, we get that, but it is going to be a requirement for next year.
A weird question, maybe it's not a question as much as a statement, like projected energy costs. I mean, that's requires additional millage and we can't cover it. I mean, you have to cover energy costs. You can't not cover your energy costs, increased energy costs, right? I mean, I'm just like, I mean, you,
Every teacher needs to turn the lights on.
You only get here half the day.
I know, I'm just kind of like,
the millage increase, people.
yeah, like, what do you do? Sorry, couldn't get the millage increase. We're only teaching in the dark now. I mean, sorry.
No, that's okay. Maybe we can move that to a different column if we're.
I just like some of it,
Or the
I mean,
next
I think software, okay. We've taught kids for generations without instructional technology. Is it an excellent tool to use? I just like, you need electricity. You know, there's some things like that you can't operate without, and there's some things that you can.
But I appreciate, and you're looking at the same lens, which is scary. You're looking at the same lens, some of the stuff, what buckets they fall into. That to me is CPI, increased cost of maintenance, materials and service. That's CPI and stuff like that.
Yes.
It's like the price of eggs. You know, sorry, it is what it is. This other one on the estimated transportation fees, I'm still trying to understand that one. If I can take that one offline, it's not a huge number at this point, but those types of things, I want to get an understanding of how much of this is being driven by inflation and, you know,
Yeah.
the fact that we have students, and how much of this is driven by costs that go up that are not necessarily tied to inflation, i.e. software costs and whatnot. Growth, okay, is not necessarily inflation, but that's the other part of that equation, right? And then other things where we're saying, you know, as a district, because of our goals, we want to do this for student achievement, we want to retain teachers. These are things we want to do and be able to have that conversation. Because if a lot of this comes down to just, you know, CPI and whatnot, I would suggest that all county buildings, their thermostats get raised 85 so that we can have the electricity to run our schools. Just saying. But, you know, putting these things in that kind of a bucket helps us to be able to answer questions or even ask better questions so we can make data-driven decisions about what we're going to have to deal with here. Thank you.
That's good. That's good. We can move that around for sure.
So the next slide is a summary.
Sorry, we're muted. There we go, the summary. You have,
Okay.
thank you.
So this next slide summarizes the categories that we just discussed. Starts with the proposed reductions, the mandates, classroom allocations, content specialists, teacher salary increases, other salary considerations, academic requests, and the departmental requests that we just finished up with. So the total of all of those requests is about $11.5 million. And to be able to do all of those requests with the current revenue projections that we have would be 20.4 mils.
You're right. We should probably move some of those
Yeah.
things that have to take place, these departmental requests, and move them up. So I think what's going to happen with this, the next time you see it, is that teacher salary increase that we can afford will be less, so that we can be balanced before we're asking for any millage for things that we have to have.
I like the story and you guys coming together, it's going clear, for the additional 11.5 or whatever. Is that over and above the 7.7 million in additional revenue that we're forecasting? So, you know, it looks like, you know, 20-some million dollars. And in order to close all those gaps with additional revenue, we would have to talk about additional millage somewhere in the neighborhood of 20.
So the 11.5 includes the stuff.
Okay.
So that's the total. So the 20.4 mils would be equivalent to about 8 million.
Yes. And some of the 11 million includes, as you see on the first line, where we were proposing the reductions. So it's a net of the additional revenues and the reductions.
Maybe getting into the weeds a little bit, but you know, like with something like, obviously, when we're looking at keeping the lights on, have we gone through like our maintenance budget, like monthly expenditures and really like taking a deep dive into how we're spending our money? I mean, if you ever look at like the transparency reports and expense reports, I mean, I do see a lot. I'm not saying, I know that it takes a lot to operate a building into, you know, all the moving parts that go into it, but also just an audit to make sure that like we're really utilizing that money to the best that we can be and fiscally conservative and not buying excess, and also seeing where we can have savings there to go into. Maybe some of that could potentially go into offset some of this. If we did a deeper audit into that, 'cause
What we're finding in our facilities maintenance budget is that because the prices are rising, fuel prices, I mean, we're very bare bones in our facility
Yeah.
maintenance. Kenny oversees that, and we're taking from one category to put into another category. So that we-
and I'm not saying that, I just think it, you know, based on how much I see come out of that, which I do know it does cost a lot, maybe there could be some budget, but maybe there's not. I mean, I think we've tried a lot of stuff, so I'm not saying you haven't.
Hold
but Doesn't hurt to ask, right?
We are squeezing them in.
Okay. And it's important that we add that so that if we are, people know that as well, you know, and we can show that to county when we.
So This next slide shows that we have some other needs that we have kind of scrubbed through and tried to find other funding sources for if we could. You'll see that there's some things that are listed under savings from our 8% program. If there's savings available, we're hoping to be able to fund some of this equipment and vehicles and some other costs that we can from that. We're also able to do a modified continuation of the HRA program utilizing Medicaid funding rather than the general fund. Takes a little pressure off the general fund for some of these other items. Then the next two slides are items that were requested, we feel are needed, but were not included in the proposal with the 11.5 million. Just as we went through a prior protocol, we wanted to include that 11.5 because this would take that additional millage needed up extremely high.
Get us some 55 minutes.
Yeah.
And these things right here, we went through probably 3 or 4 times just to figure out and bring in our experts in these departments to figure out, can we live without these and continue to go with needs and not cutting programming and still meeting the needs of students. So this was not an easy task because we felt like these are all needs, but can't afford everything. So.
Also see in this section that some of them have the 3 stars by them, 3 asterisks by them. These were ones that the principals have voiced concerns about, and they all center around special education teachers and the difficulty we have in trying to secure them. And as we look and our sister districts look as well, they have a leg up, if you will, on us as it relates to how much they pay, even with signing bonuses and with pay itself for special education teachers. So the concern is that our teachers may choose to go to other districts because they can make more money there versus staying.
So just running, I'm not going to read everything on this list, but you can see that the first item was an increase to the ECA schedule. Last year, we did a substantial increase to the ECA schedule to like salary schedule. And we just felt that based on the increase that happened last year and the financial impact of everything else this year, that we wanted to put a hold on that for next year.
Does everybody understand that one? That would be like your coaching stipends, your co-curricular stipends. We were able to give pretty good raises on those stipends last year. And we connected it to the index, like she was talking about, the lowest teacher salary. So if that beginning teacher salary goes up, then there's a percentage index that multiplies that, and then that would go up. And so we would just freeze it this year. As you can see, there's a savings of $500,000. Again, trying to put it into teacher salaries. And so that's why we decided to do that. So.
You see the signing bonuses that we just talked about for special ed teachers and for all other teachers, increasing those. We are still paying them. We just wanted to be able to increase them. So it's the increase that is not included, not what we're doing now. Longevity stipends were considered. Other things that were considered were the elementary alternative school, assistant principal at Span and Somerville, attendance secretaries at the schools. We know that that was a request that a lot of the schools had and a need. But we just were not able to fit that in. And like Chad said, we had extensive discussions about all of these, and it was painful, but just not able to include them at this time. They're fine.
And a lot of those were kind of with our principals too. You know, Dr. Wilson met with a lot of people. So we talk about those secretaries and getting support in those buildings again, trying to figure out where we can get the money. And so we still thought we needed to put it on the list, as Mr. Lee said, just painting that picture of where we were at and kind of where we've gone. We're still not where we need to be, as you can see the numbers. So still working on this.
So then there's some other special education positions that were needed for occupational therapists, physical therapists, social workers, then some ML related positions, And the last section is technology and maintenance requests that weren't able to be funded. And then I will let Chad talk a little bit about the last item, which was the staff. person.
Yeah, the childcare, I know we've talked, that's a board initiative and a goal, so that's something we're gonna bring to the board later this month in a presentation to talk about the requirements with DSS. We've got a meeting scheduled with Joe Debney from YMCA. What's that look like for cost effectiveness? So looking at the rooms, looking at the furniture, all those things, we want to bring that. I know that was in our workshop ahead of time. I think we had a $400,000 cost, but the timing of this with DSS and some of those regulations, we may not be able to pull that off for next year because of that timing piece. So we just want to make sure we bring it and you have all the details on that. So that's why we're just gonna put a number on that, because if that's something that wants to move forward, that's a priority. We just want to make sure you have all that information.
I can only speak for myself, but I think, when you see some of these like things that I know are substantial needs, it makes me want to cry. That gets upset. Obviously that's not going to be doable, that.
So just to summarize this section, these 2 pages with the red headings are a total of $12.7 million. Needs that were requested that this point with what's available, we have not been able to include this.
Those are all the detailed line items included in the budget proposal. This is just our calendar that shows, that today is our workshop. We have another workshop on the 14th. See if we get any additional information from the state. I'm not hopeful about it, but, just from us talking today, we can determine some initiatives or some direction from y'all where you'd like to see us go, to bring back some other information. By then or in between times. We have some public input meetings. And then we present our draft to county council on May 12th. So just kind of laying out the timeline there. We don't typically have the board approve the budget now until June, just in case there are some things that come out of Columbia that could affect our budget. But if we are going to ask for a millage increase, we would need to ask at the May meeting. To their county council meeting.
So just think about them paying $25 a week. Kids go to school in Charleston County. And then I look at this and it just makes me so angry. Makes me so angry. I digress.
I completely, yeah, completely
Sorry,
agree.
y'all.
No, I completely agree. My
Yeah.
friend in my suite, Christy, has to remind me, she said, you're presenting the information. You don't have to try to create the money. You are presenting the
I
information.
know.
And it makes us, yeah.
You see
Exactly
this
that.
and I'm like, man, like every single thing on there, I like, when I'm even reading the red stuff, I'm like, it's not a want. Like, and some of it I know personally, like the need, and it just, like, I hope our people know, like, it breaks our heart, like, to be in the situation we are. And I can speak for every board member I know here, like, we are working our tails off, advocating behind the scenes, trying to figure out what we can do to like figure a path forward for us based on the disparities, but this is inequitable. When you look at Charleston County paying $25 a week for students to go to school, and we're just trying to keep the lights on, it's gross to me. And it just like, it hit me when you were just going through that, and I'm looking at this list, and it just made me really, really sad. So, sorry, but I'm sorry.
I did the same thing when we presented to the principal last week. I did the same thing.
Charleston and Berkeley they get to increase their own bills.
I know,
You don't have to go ask somebody else.
yeah.
They increase their bills as they can all along the way, so it's.
And they have.
I mean, and then a value, like, I mean, just all of it, like the recipe of all of the suckiness of all the moving parts of it, like every way that we could possibly get the shaft, I feel like we do. And it's just, it's sad because our kids and our people are some of the best and they deserve it. They do.
you know, we've been a bedroom community to Charleston for so long, and that's where our tax base is homes. Of course, we don't have the business and industry like those other two, the other two counties that are neighboring with us. I mean, people don't realize that when you go up to Azalea Square, you're helping to fund Berkeley schools, not ours. It is, it's wonderful.
And, you know, Scott tells you too, when we look across the state, you know, we just happen to have the two big dogs.
Right
That we
next to
compete with right now, that those are our neighbors. You know, whereas somewhere else in the state, all around us, we need higher. Here, we're fighting the two top dogs.
Joy of living.
Yes.
If there isn't having things thrown at me, I have one more ask. Back on slide 8, laid out the operating millage increase history. Could you possibly add to that corresponding CPI growth numbers for those years?
Sure.
That just adds a little bit of flavor to that. See as well. Me personally, just generally speaking, I appreciate you put together a coherent story, and thank you for that. I have indigestion at the moment, so we're gonna have to consume some of this and really look at it. Very good.
Let me just go on record as saying, I know some people say I'm hard on parents. I'm not hard on parents. I just want them to take on their share. I'm not hard on those that control our budget. I just want them to basically do their job. We can want it, but they're the ones that's holding the purse string. I can't be but who I am. And as I'm sitting here, it makes me angry. I'm angry. I taught for 37 years and never went above $70,000 with a master's plus. So what they're saying is, it doesn't matter what you do in order to help them get to where they are. They're still not going to do what they know they should do. And so I'm one of those person that is just going to be outspoken and say, our legislators need to do their job. If they don't know the suffering that we're going through right now, our students, our teachers, all of those that work in this district, they need to come and have a sit down with us and not come and sit in a meeting that I sat in once where one of the persons there looked as if he was just totally bored and disgusted by having to come. If you don't want to do your job, get off the board and let someone that's interested in what we're doing get on the board. And I speak to our community. Stop re-electing people that won't do their job. We cannot educate these children. And we're not getting that right now. I can see if the entire district was not getting what they needed. Those same legislators got an increase. And I'm not talking about a mini increase. I'm talking about a big increase. I believe the board needs an increase, but guess what? I'm willing to pull for my increase in order to make sure our children have, but that would be nothing compared to what we need. So if the money is available, I can see if we were a poor state and we didn't have it. But to make us come and beg for it, and you still won't give it to us, what do you want us to do? So I speak to the public, and I say the public, especially if you have children, grandchildren that you love and want educated, then I need you to do your job and hold your representatives responsible for the dilemma that we're in. It's not as though we were just giving money away willy-nilly and buying everything that we wanted. We spent money on things that were needed before I even got on this board. And now that I'm on the board and see what we're doing, I'm sorry. It makes me angry. And I'm hurt that you would let a district as good as we have been just go down like that. The teachers are suffering. They got to pay their light bill, water bill. And when I say teachers, I mean the custodial staff, bus drivers. If they work with children, they need to be supported. And one of the way you support them is you basically give the money that is needed. You may not be able to give us everything, but we shouldn't have to come to you and beg for a millage. I have you predetermined that you're not gonna give it. What's right about that? And we're in this predicament, and by it, I don't know a lot, but in my opinion, what I've seen, you're the one that signed off us to continue to build houses instead of some industries that would make it better for us. So now you gotta do that. I'm through. Thank you.
We appreciate all your hard work, and I know that wasn't easy.
That's not you.
We do. We're not mad at you.
Oh, I know.
We love you.
Well, it really, it is hurtful when we're trying to balance the budget and give raises and be close to our neighbors. And we have heard in the past, that the council doesn't like to give increases because again, it's on the small businesses in our community. We don't have a lot of big businesses, so they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that.
Agreement is also trying to lure bigger businesses, and if they raise millage, it makes
They want.
it harder to attract them, so.
Maybe they need to come up with a supplemental program for school districts that are disproportionately affected by Act 388.
They do tell us that we should need to get Act 388 changed. That will never change.
That's why I said a
It's not gonna
supplemental
change.
program, because if you're not gonna, I get it, but then like, okay, I mean, the state average is 18,000 per student or something like that, like, I mean, we're well below the state average, so get it like somewhat.
And yet we have all these kids that are able to get scholarships and do all that they're doing. We have a wonderful athletic department, all of that with the little that you give us.
Imagine what we could do with 18,000 per student. I just think about that.
For those of you that have more questions, please email them to us. Again, we're going to come back and do this again on the 14th, I believe. So we can have those questions into that presentation again to kind of tweak this again, coming up with everything that we've kind of discussed here moving forward, but to paint a more detailed picture. This is very broad, as you said, Mr. Lee, so maybe we can get a little more detailed into that.
You know, you guys have responded and produced what we asked you to produce. Thank you for that. Turn that around, aside from an approved budget. What do you need from the board?
This is more like. Appreciate that. And what you're doing outside of these walls, we know that you're fighting for us, having conversations with people. We know that. So we appreciate that. And just appreciate the dialogue where you're at, what you want from us, so we can bring that information to you and we can make that decision together. You know, I think it's kind of evident where we need to go and after we bring this back to you again. And so make sure we're doing everything we can to tighten our belt, as we would say, right size before we do anything else, which I think everybody here at this table is trying to do. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. If there's nothing else, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Ms. Bates, seconded by Ms. Powell. In favor, 6 in favor, 1 absent. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Y'all. Coach, you're for adjournment, listen to your dispatch.
I don't need to.
Good evening.